I just want to say it's been a great afternoon listening to the three of them. So please join me again in thanking them. Very, very inspiring. I taught school for a number of years in the 70s, was a principal, was a school superintendent for 15 years, and now for the last 13 years have had the privilege of leading Battelle for Kids. And as I thought about this, I thought about my youngest daughter. She was taking a high school social studies class. Now, I taught social studies like you, Janice, for a number of years. And each night she would come home and she would ask her mother for help. Now, her mother was a second grade teacher, and I didn't say anything. Second night she came home. By third night, I'm kind of irritated. I said, how come you're not asking me for help? I taught social studies for a long time. She said, because you tell me more than I want to know. So my goal is to not tell you more than you want to know. Now, there's also a power in communication of 3. So if you have 3 ideas, 3 whatever, it works. You can Google that. It's true. So I want to start with a story of 2 teachers, one effective, one ineffective. I want to offer an illustration and a quote to begin with. And of course, the illustration will have 3 points. Now, the story is this. There's a teacher, and it's so interesting to listen to the earlier speakers. This was a 6th grade teacher at a middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Now, she served a middle school that had 3 feeder schools. So one of the things that she did was to take the memory books of each of the elementary schools and take her homeroom so she knew what the kids' names were by looking at their pictures. And the first day when they walked into class, she goes, "Hey, Bob, how are you?" And it's like, "How'd you know my name?" "Melissa, welcome." Melissa was blown away. You get the idea. She knew kids. She was the kind of teacher who would go make sure she went to the junior high basketball games, even when she no longer had the kids, or go to the summer baseball games. She built incredible relationships with kids. She also loved to make things relevant. She's the kind of person who might read an article that night or might see a movie and think, wait a minute, I bet I could buy this and I could make this a unit and put this together, all those kinds of things. Kids never knew what to expect. It was always relevant. It was interesting. Now I'll tell you about another teacher, taught same grade level. This teacher rarely was organized about anything. Classroom management was a struggle, sometimes getting kids settled down to begin with. If you looked at her lesson plan honestly was more like a diary because she's filling in what she had done. And if a principal asked her, said, well, how does this relate to our goals? And she was haphazard at best on anything related to Common Core or the state standards, all of those things. Now, let's stop for a minute and you think about which teacher you'd want. And then, of course, you can probably see it's the same teacher. The truth of it is, teaching is too complex to ever suggest that it's 4 or 5 things and you just do those, because it's not enough to just build relationships. There's a whole host of things, and I want to share this with you. I brought this illustration with me. This was the second of 3 if you're counting. This is a replica of a monkey trap. Now, if you've ever seen one of these or not, they use these in West Africa. The ropes are longer. They'll tie it around a tree. They'll put nuts and berries in this. Now, a monkey will come up. A monkey will stick its hand in here, grasp the nuts and berries, and can't get its hand out. Now, then the captors will come. Now, all it has to do is let go, drop the nuts and berries, leave. Do you know how many monkeys do that? Virtually none. That's why it works. Counselors sometimes use this in counseling sessions to say, what are those things we just need to let go of? Just let go of. I bet we have them in families too. We just need to let go of them. Now I'm going to suggest 3. One is that we need to let go of the notion that learning can't be measured. It can't be measured perfectly, but it can be measured, and it should be measured. How do you improve a goal you don't measure? Or worse yet, how do you improve one you don't have? Now, the second one I think we need to let go of is this notion that almost is counterintuitive from the first one, and that's that everything that counts can be counted. You know it can't be. It's interesting. I read lots of books. I have never seen one in the business section or education section that said, evaluated into greatness. I've never seen that, but we're making a big bet on evaluation. And we need to let go of the notion that we can give tests to kids at the end of the year, parse out the correct attribution to teachers, give teachers labels, call it a day and move on. I can't think of anything insidious, more insidious to teachers than to characterize something that is so challenging and so difficult into a label. Yet I have to tell you, we're doing a lot of that. Now, it's interesting. One of my favorite history people was Harry Truman. Harry Truman said, I don't give people hell. I just tell them the truth, and it sounds like hell. That is what's going on. Now, the third point I want to make about we need to let go is this notion that teaching is so simple that we could pick up a Red Book magazine. 4 ways to color your hair, 5 ways to improve your personality, 3 ways to be a better teacher. I want to demonstrate to you that it's intellectually much more complex than that. Now, the quote is this. Those who are counting 3s again. The quote is, it's one of my favorites. The grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. If we water support, we get something different. If we name, blame, and shame, as opposed to uncover, discover, and recover, we get something different. So whatever you water is what you get. Now, I want to take this notion of effective teachers and effective teaching. Because you can be, as I tried to demonstrate, an effective teacher in some areas of your practice and less effective in others. And how is it that we integrate these in ways that make sense? Because I want to show you a model that I think absolutely does that. But at Battelle for Kids, we have been studying highly effective teachers in 3 states predominantly, Ohio, Tennessee, and Texas. And we have followed teachers now over 6 years that have made extraordinary gains with kids, whose principals have said, these are among the finest teachers we have. In some cases, we've used student surveys because students have given us feedback to suggest the classroom practices made so much sense. So it was multiple measures over time. And then we used appreciative inquiry, bringing people together to ask them, what is it that you do that seems to account for this extraordinary success? Now, all of that's been assembled, and what I want to share with you is a model. And the model has been adapted from a professor at the University of Michigan, at the Ross School of Business, no less, Professor Quinn, who's developed a framework, is now one of the 25 most leading frameworks in the 20th century. And we contacted him because the results we found seemed to fit his research on highly effective organizations and highly effective CEOs. Turns out teachers are just exactly that. They are absolutely CEOs of a highly complex organization, and you couldn't help but, when you saw the film with Cassandra, to not think how complex this really is. Now, I want to use 3 ropes to demonstrate 4 colors, because I'm going to give us a language to talk about this with. Now, I want to describe each of these because really they've already been described by the people before me. Let's start with, just for a minute, you can see the red because you can't read all of these, but I don't know if red would be, if you're a teacher and educator, your long one or short one, but let me describe red. Red is that classroom environment that somebody creates that you talk so well about. Red is about structures. It's about routines. It's about how we do business. It's about those pieces. Now, red may be your strong one. I don't know. Now, the next one, sometimes almost at odds, is green, because green's creativity. It's teaching in a moment. It's having a new idea. It's getting excited. I'd be willing to bet the farm, Cassandra. It's like, I want to try this in a learning center. Somebody told me about this, and I think this will work. That's exactly what green is about. And sometimes these are almost at odds, because red, the structure part, I can remember when I started teaching, someone said to me, don't smile till Christmas. You know what I've learned after 40 years? The people that don't smile before Christmas, hell, they don't smile after Christmas. Now, when we think about green, it is that innovation. It's looking for those new ideas. Maybe that's your long or short. Now, the longest one here, I'm going to let this count. So this is red. This is green. This one's long enough. I'm going to let it be 2. Yellow is absolutely about relationships. And it's about how we create that connection with kids that really matters. Because connections and human relations absolutely are at the heart of it. Do kids work harder for somebody they think cares about them? Duh. Hello? Absolutely. It's a means to an end. Now, blue may be your long one because blue is about outcomes. It's about results. Because sometimes blue and yellow, it can be at odds. Because we have those teachers sometimes who, in the yellow, say, I just really love the kids. They don't learn anything, but I love them. Now, blue carried to extremes is welcome to the sweatshop. And I would argue, what good does it make? Does it matter to make 3 years of progress in math if a kid never wants to do a math problem again the rest of their life? Now, I want you to think about these 4 quadrants and think, which one's your strongest? Which one do you think is most important? Which one do you think effective teachers all do well? Now, what I'm going to tell you is this. They're all equally important. If you think because you can build relationships and connections that you don't have to have good practices, you don't have to expect things, it doesn't work that way. And by the same token, I've got routines, I've got the way we do things, we have order, classroom management, that will carry me. It's not sufficient. Now, I also realize that as you try things, as somebody reminded me years ago, there are no lessons, there are no mistakes, just lessons. And I'll just briefly tell you about one. Janice, you could probably relate to this one as an administrator. I organized in our county, I was an assistant superintendent many years ago, the first time we had ever had an in-service for 1,000 teachers. And we had put together a whole host of things that we'd never done this before. And it turned out to be disastrous. It was so bad, the next day teachers in the district where I worked had made little badges that said, I stayed. I stayed. Now, I went to our superintendent who had been superintendent for many years, and I apologized. I was sorry. And he could have squashed my enthusiasm right then to ever do anything again. But instead he said, well, if you're going to do it again, what would you do differently? What'd you learn? And then he said to me, there are no mistakes, just lessons. And it's sort of funny, isn't it? Because for adults, it's just the opposite for you. Because kids get the lesson and the test. Not true for adults. We get the test and then the lessons. Now, I want you to think about these 4 quadrants again. And I no longer want you to think about the fact that they're equally important. I want to tie them together because what really matters, what we've learned about highly effective teachers is they don't move from one to the next. They don't have a strength in one of these and hope that the other 3 get carried. They integrate all 4 of these. They integrate these so it just becomes a string of these. This is what really matters. Highly effective teachers are like a CEO in the middle, and they're paying attention to these because we know carried to extreme, any one of these are not good. Let me give you lots of examples because you think about your practice. I bet you could think of examples. I remember superintendent, we had an orchestra teacher, and the orchestra teacher really knew content. That's in red. Had lots of structure. That's in red. Really cared about outcomes. Strong blue. And one day I said, why don't you go to a volleyball game? He said, why would I go to a volleyball game? He said, I don't like volleyball. I said, well, do you like 5 of those girls that sit in the first chair for you? He said, yeah. I said, really? They don't think you like them. They're about all ready to quit. And did you know that they're all on the volleyball team that went to the state semifinals last year? Just go to a volleyball game. You don't even have to like volleyball. Just act like you do. I guarantee you in class the next day, it'll be different. He did, and you know, of course, what happened. Because he needed to move to that yellow quadrant. It was important to have done that and to have moved there. We have learned that effective teachers and effective teaching is about practices. And we can learn these. So that's how we identified them. Here's what we learned from them. The other thing comes up all the time. Well, are great teachers born or made? Now, near as I can figure, teachers account for 65% of the variance in student achievement. So they matter most. Now, if that's true, we have two choices. We either get new teachers, fire all the ones we have, or we offer improvement strategies for the ones we do have. And I guess I'm in the second category because I never met a teacher who didn't want to get better. The problem was somebody needed to give them support as to how to be better. So as we think about these quadrants, we have found they have led to incredible conversations because all teachers have strength in these, and build on your strength. Because if your strength is relationships and connected, yellow, you can use those to build on the others. If I'm down in blue and I want to improve blue, and I love the fact that Cassandra, you talked about the formative instructional practices, setting learning targets. It's sort of interesting. If I were a superintendent again, everyone would have to be engaged in formative instructional techniques because it's like they asked Willie Sutton, they said, Willie, how come you rob banks? Willie said, because that's where the money is. If you want to know where achievement is, it's in absolutely the formative instructional practices, helping kids to set goals, giving them feedback along the way on how they're doing. It's not about grades. It's about helping somebody to do something they couldn't do before. And a blue teacher might say, now, wait a minute, John, I want you to look at this rubric. And I want you to look at your paper and you tell me where you are from this rubric. I think you could do better than that. That's using a blue one. So at the end of the day, these three matter. These four quadrants matter. Effective teachers integrate these practices. That's why it works. And can we grow more? Absolutely. In one of Gladwell's books, and then another book by Jeffrey Colvin, Talent is Overrated. Turns out your mother was right. You want to get good at something, practice it. This 10,000 hours of practice. And the idea about working at our craft and our practice and sharing all those things, it does matter. The best ideas I ever got as a teacher came from other teachers. I've worked hard to overcome a PhD. The truth of it is, it was from other people who were doing what I've been doing. I have to tell you that about 3 years ago, I was in Atlanta. I met a teacher there, a college professor, who taught an English department. And this had just happened, so he wanted to tell somebody about it. And I just happened to be lucky enough to sit by him. And he said, I taught high school English at a small high school in eastern Pennsylvania for a number of years. And he said, then I came to NC State, got a master's PhD, and I've been teaching here for a number of years, and I won a teaching award, and there was a picture of me in the paper. And then I got a call from a former student, said, Dr. Such and Such, were you Mr. Such and Such? He said, yeah. So he said, I made plans to see this girl whom I hadn't seen in nearly 30 years. And he said, then I thought about that class she was in. Now, anybody who's ever taught has classes they always want to remember. We also have some we can't forget, but we have those. He said, this was a great class. It was senior English. They loved to read books. He loved to give them those assignments, have great discussions. And he said he hated to see the year end. And he said, I got a little carried away at the end, and I gave each kid a 4-page handout with 25 books we never got to that you need to read. Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, and a short paragraph describing it. And he gave each a 4-page handout. Now, he said, I met her for lunch and we caught up on kids and things. He said it was just wonderful. And he said, then she reached into her purse. He said, I have something. She pulled out a 4-page handout that had been folded and unfolded and refolded countless times, opened it up. The purple had started to fade. There were short notations made about each one. And then she said, I read all 25 of these books. When do we get our next assignment? Teaching is the gift that keeps giving. I don't know the percentage of kids in our country that are under 18, but let's say it's 25%, because it really doesn't matter. If kids represent 25% of our population, what I do know is that they represent 100% of our future. In absentia, for all those people who give hours and hours and hours to making dreams come true for kids, in the words of Krista McAuliffe, I touch the future I teach. And on behalf of all those kids, to all of you who work with kids, I want to say on their behalf, thank you for all you do.